Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this edition of Facts and Realities of Education. In Facts and Realities of Education, we discuss educational issues, finding out those areas that needs renovation, that needs amendment for the smooth functioning of this important sector in our society. Today in the program, we will be talking about the bilingual nature of schools in our country, Cameroon. And with me in the studio are teachers who are in the field. They would, through their experiences, what they also observe, like you and I, they will tell us what is in the field. They would help us to try to understand the situation of bilingual nature of schools in our country. We begin with Mr. Ngum Eric. Mr. Ngum Eric is not a new name in this program, and we are glad he has made up time to be part of us again. Good evening, sir, and welcome.
Good evening, and good evening to all the viewers of DBS this evening.
Thank you so much. With Mr. Ngum Eric, we have Mr. Mai Boniface, who is with us here to talk about this bilingual nature of schools in Cameroon. Good evening, Mr. Mai, and welcome to this program.
Yeah, good evening, sir. It's a pleasure.
The pleasure is mine and that of our televiewers having you with us this evening. We want to look at this issue of bilingual schools in Cameroon. When you move about, there are a lot of schools that you have them as groups scolaires, bilingual, whatsoever that can follow, in the name of bilingual schools, even in both public and private sector, because in the public sector you have government bilingual high school. In this edition of the program, we want to find out how this bilingualism manifests itself or portrays itself through our educational sector. That is why we want to begin, like, what is the situation that we have in our schools, Mr. Ngum? When you look at the bilingual schools that we have in town, for example, Douala, what do we have? Can you describe them?
Yeah, I would like to say that looking at the bilingual natures of schools, I will talk on the government and the private schools. What is rightly on the field is that we have schools that are operating both English and French section, not bilingual, the way I can put it. If we want to talk of bilingual, it means that we want the teachers to be solely bilingual and all the students studied in both French and English. Not that there is a section in the English language and there is equally a section in French. So I have schools that I have observed in Douala, they are having English section and the French section. Yeah.
Okay, we want to maintain that this is Mr. Ngum Eric. This is not Boniface, this is Ngum Eric. And then this is Boniface. Mr. Boniface, do you see what, no, Mr. Mai, do you observe the same thing like Mr. Ngum is explaining?
Yeah, with what Mr. Ngum is trying to say, I think he is correct, but people fail to understand the meaning of bilingualism. Because when we look into bilingualism simply means the effectiveness of a person or of the citizens to be effective in two languages. The effectiveness of a person or citizen in two languages.
And in our context of Cameroon, we're talking about French and English.
Yes, when we look into the French and the English system, you will discover that the bilingualism is not applicable. In the sense that when we go into bilingual schools, like I as a teacher in some of the schools, I noticed that bilingualism is not fully applicable in these schools.
So can you go ahead, describe what is there that makes you conclude that this is not bilingualism?
I think
that this is not the bilingual nature of what we mean by a school being bilingual.
Yes, obviously it is not a bilingual nature when we look into the nursery section right up to the tertiary sector. When we look into the nursery, right, or when I talk of the nursery sector, I'm talking of the nursery schools, right up to the university levels. Because I can imagine in schools like universities in Douala, where we think there are bilingual universities, in Yaoundé where we think there are bilingual, like SWA, like University of Douala, we think they are pure bilingual universities. And you will notice that the program there is highly follow up in French.
Yes.
Like those doing economics and science, management, we notice that all their programs, year 1, year 2, and the 3rd level is completely French.
Mr. Mai, before we continue, is it official that the University of Douala should be bilingual? Is it official that the University of SWA in Yaoundé should be bilingual? Is it official?
Obviously, it is official that the university should be bilingual, but I think the English part is highly neglected by the officials.
Okay. Well, because let's be clear with our context here. When we talk of bilingual schools, when you pass along the road and you see a signboard, they say this is a bilingual school. What type of product do you expect to have from that school, Mr. Ngum?
I believe that if they call a bilingual school, let's limit ourselves maybe in the primary, secondary schools.
Yes, let's say this is
we
a
want
government bilingual school.
Yes, we want to feel that if they say this is a bilingual school, it means that the teachers in that school are productive both French and English, and they are capable to train a student that will come out, and that student is capable of reading in English and French, writing English and French, behaving in both English and French, and can act in those two languages. That is how I believe a bilingual school should be.
But we have the contrary.
Yeah, we rather have a student that a section that is offering French, and there is an English subject or period. To study a language within your program, then you have a course in that particular program that is in French. Does not call that program a bilingual program.
Okay.
Because at the end you will be having that course, but you will not be able to behave in French or the English, behave in English and in French. Bilingual nature means that the outcome will be that you can be active in both French and English, in reading, in writing, and talking, and so on. That is how I see the product of a bilingual school should look like.
Okay, Mr. Mai, when you were citing the situation of the university, what happened to the students who are there now? Because they are supposed to come in from various backgrounds.
Yes.
What happened to?
Yes, I noticed in these schools, students that are leaving University of Douala and Yaoundé, most students they only struggle to have their
Validate their courses,
and at the 10 they don't they are not always good in the French language. The Anglophones, I'm talking of the Anglophones in this school, and they find it very difficult. Meaning that students there, what they do is that they only struggle to validate their courses. Why, when you look into universities like the University of Boya, where we have a lot of Francophones there as students, classes are always organized to meet up with the demand of the students. It's when it comes to English language, and you will discover that a Francophone coming out from the University of Boya is always well firm with the English system. Why those Anglophone students living from the French university, they are not always firm with the French language.
So are you like saying that the University of Boya is a bilingual university par excellence?
I think that university is a pure Anglo-Saxon university, but in that university they are always ready to change Francophones to be pure English students.
A situation which does not obtain in
the Francophones university or in the French university.
No, when you say French universities, there are nothing like there's nothing like French university. What we have is we simply have a University of Yaoundé, we have a University of Douala.
Yes, okay. Obviously in this university, what I noticed, as I said, if you are not a pure bilingual student, you cannot study effectively in any of these university in the Francophone regions. For example, when your students offering law in the University of Douala, the first 2 years, first level and second level, we have about 70% of the courses are carried out in French, while 30% is carried out in English language. It's only in the third level, the level 3, where you have all the courses now, 100% of the courses in French and the 100% of the courses in English.
If that's the case, then somebody who is coming from an English background like you, like me, like him, if I should go to University of Douala now, it makes me more bilingual because I already have an English background, and if I'm being trained in French, does that not make me more a bilingual Cameroonian than just studying English?
Yes, what I'm trying to say is that it makes you more bilingual, but to an extent, most students always struggle only to validate their courses, as we earlier said.
Yes.
you discover a student coming out from the University of Douala, but he is not versed in that French. Meaning that the French will still be more than him at the end of the day.
Okay, Mr. Ngum.
But he have the diploma already from that university.
Yeah. Okay, Mr. Ngum, if I take, for example, Government Bilingual School, Government Bilingual High School, Daido, for example. If I'm studying at Government Bilingual High School, Daido, Bobongo, Brazzaville, any of these, is it not an added advantage that we have the English subsystem of education in this school, we have the French subsystem of education in this school? Would it not make me bilingual? Is that not an opportunity?
The context of bilingual schools, like I started analyzing, I told you that writing at the signboard government bilingual school does not make that school or the product of that school bilingual. We look at the input and we still look at the output. There is no school in Cameroon that is training bilingual teachers. Rather, we have
that trains bilingual teachers.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
But we have bilingual schools. Having a French in a subject, you have 15 subjects. A student is offering 15 subjects in Form 1, and French is included. Does not mean that if those 14 subjects are taught in English, and that student is having just French as a subject, does not equate that it is not a bilingual student. It is just the same as I'm studying management in the University of Boya, and French become now compulsory. It does not make the university a bilingual university.
Okay.
When we are talking of bilingual, we mean that the student will come out, that student is able to read, write, both languages smoothly, be able to interact smoothly with those two languages, and why not the professional field, excel in the professional field professionally. So if you are saying that you are found in you found yourself in the government bilingual school, then you are segmented. Where you are staying, you are it is English.
A section for French.
Yes, there is a section for
English.
French and there is a section for English. I still say that those are not bilingual schools. There are just two schools in one. That is an English system of education and the French system of education mixed in the same
in the same campus.
Yes.
Okay. You people are teachers. Let's try to find out. We are trying to identify. This example I'm trying to bring, maybe it might have been ahead of all of us. Some time ago, the government bilingual high school, Moliko, used to be, it was the pilot center for bilingualism in this country when this notion of bilingualism was initiated, which means those who graduated from Moliko were bilingual. They had the bilingual certificate. That is, they had the London GCE, they had the BAC certificate when they graduated.
Yes.
Along the line, Mr. Mai, where could you identify this drop or this abandonment of such a system that was able to train Cameroonians that are bilingual?
I said you have used an example taking the government high school, bilingual high school Moliko, and that was the first bilingual school in Cameroon.
Yes.
That school was created in 1967.
Good, you have the facts.
1967, after the reunification.
Okay.
When the British and the French came together. So the bilingualism was introduced in that year.
Okay.
Immediately after the reunification. And we discovered that when it started, it was somehow effective. But along the way, we see that things gradually change. Things gradually change. When we look around the country, in our country now, you discover that we have many bilingual schools. But as Mr. Ngum rightly said, we don't have bilingual schools in Cameroon
any longer.
Schools that we can say that they are more effective in both English and French. But we have two systems of this school in the same campus. Meaning that the francophone system is managed by a different management, while the English system is also, the French system is managed by a different management, while the English system is also managed by a different management. When we look into the bilingualism nature of schools in Cameroon, we discover that the disadvantages start from the administration. You cannot be in a school called a bilingual school, and the principal is a francophone, And the francophone here, in coming out with a communique, he come out with a communique written only in French.
Wait. Let's come back to something clear, right? Yeah. We're talking of a case maybe here in Douala.
Yeah.
If it is in my village, which is not in Douala, and the principal there is an Anglophone, will he write the communique also in French? Or is it a case that is in both sides?
I think any communication that should be coming out in the bilingual school should be in both English and French.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. But what we are explaining is we have a situation where administrators communicate only in one language.
Only in one language.
Because I did not want that we should pin it like as if they only communicate in French. Because in my village, when I go there, I also see information also in English.
Not a bilingual school.
Oh, okay, but then they call it government bilingual high school from my village. Okay, Mr. Ngum, I will come back to you, Mr. Mai. Mr. Ngum, let's come back to this point. I was asking the question, if we had such a valuable school like government bilingual school or high school, Moliko, that existed as early as he's saying, what can be the possible causes that we neglect such a venture that was producing real Cameroonians worthy of the name?
I'm still too young to look at that.
That's why I said this thing came before us.
What I want to tell you is that when you are a kid and you are first looking at how your parents are working, you can say something. What I want to say with the gradual wiping out of the nature of that school that was purely bilingual, producing the products that we want, is that those that are ruling the academic ladder,
those are in charge of the academic,
those that are in charge of the academic, the curriculum here in this country, we want to say that at times they do it out of their selfish interest.
Okay.
Because I don't see a reason why such an institution, the values that were producing, benefited by all Cameroonians, are gradually being wiped out. And I'm sorry to say that maybe it is wiped out because it was located in Boya or so, but then I cannot say much about that. But I want to say that those that are running or the curriculums of the academic in Cameroon, at times they are doing it out of selfish interest. Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Ngum, let's continue before we get to Mr. Mai. What should have been the situation? If we are to have bilingual Cameroonians, what should have been the case? How should these bilingual schools look like?
If we want to have bilingual schools and bilingual Cameroonians,
yes,
because Cameroon is already bilingual.
On the paper, I think.
If we want to have bilingual schools and produce bilingual Cameroonians, we have a lot to do as far as my opinion is concerned. One, there should be an institution put in place to train bilingual teachers. If they are bringing in the concept of bilingualism, then it is implemented by people that are not, or teachers that are not bilingual
themselves.
The outcome cannot be fruitful.
Okay.
There should be an institution that is out to train bilingual teachers. Then we will have bilingual schools, bilingual Cameroon, and bilingual Cameroonians. That's how I look at it.
Okay. Before we come back to you, Mr. Mai, because you should also have something to, like, really for us to reframe the nature of bilingual schools in Cameroon. We want to remind our viewers, like those who are participating in the program, we had those who contributed from Ndawara, those who contributed from Jakiri, those who contributed from Chang, those who contributed from the Southwest. Please, you are still free to participate in the program using the contacts that you have here on our screen, and we would come back to you. How would you have loved, or you would have suggested that these bilingual schools should be managed? How would you have loved them to be? It's not a matter of loving. How should it have been?
Yes, to promote bilingualism in schools, it should first start from the government officials.
Okay.
From the top. When our administration does from the Minister of Higher Education, if a communique is coming out, that communique should be in both English and the French. Yeah. By so doing, the principals in schools will be able to take up that system. Such an example.
But we must acknowledge that the recent very near future or recent ministers have been doing something to that, to make sure that communicate, especially in the education sector. I think that they have always been
for some time now. They have been trying to improve but we need more. Yeah, so that we can have a lot of changes. Because is schools in Douala, as we rightly said, there are not bilingual schools. We have a lot of facts that when you enter in a school,
go ahead, please.
We
have
see
facts and realities, and
we see students who merely speak French, because when you enter into bilingual school now, you will not even notice that there is an English student in this school. All the students in Douala speak French, but in the course of writing, you see them mixing up things. They speak French, but they cannot write down the French.
Okay.
They speak French well, but to put it down is something else. And we say bilingualism is when you can speak, read, understand, and write it well.
Yes.
So we notice that our students here in school, they can speak the French, but they cannot write it down. And we cannot call you a bilingual Cameroonian.
Okay, that's the situation in Douala. In my village, I'm from a village called Jakiri. There is a government bilingual high school in Jakiri. I doubt if students who come out from government bilingual high school Jakiri can they speak French?
I don't think so,
because the situation is not as if it's only peculiar to.
Yes, I don't think so. I think it is obvious that maybe you grow up in a way that you have never heard of bonjour, and when a French teacher enters the class, you'll be bound to go out.
Okay.
Most of the students always leave the class once the French teacher is coming in, and I think there French is not like it's not a system. It is just a subject.
It's a subject.
It is a subject, not a system. Meaning that French there is a subject to the student. So the student will always look into it that even if I fail French and I pass in my other subject, I'll go ahead.
Okay.
So they neglect that French, and that's why they'll always find it difficult to.
Okay, Mr. Ngum, before we come to you, Mr. Ma, if you were to talk to those very students who have always been running away from classes, from French classes in the English section and from English classes in the French section, what would you tell them?
To the students, I will likely tell the students to take their their studies very serious, especially when it comes to the languages.
The second language,
which is French
or English, as the case may be.
English and French. They should always take these two subjects very serious, because tomorrow they might find it very difficult, especially when they move into the universities. Because when you are coming up in an anglophone as an anglophone, you don't know if tomorrow you will be going back to Swa or
Wakile.
Yes. So when you happen to go to any of these university in the French regions, the francophone regions, you will discover that you will find it very difficult to make it. So what you'll be doing there in the school now, you will just be trying to validate your courses, meaning that you can use any means to validate your courses and move to another level.
Okay.
And when you validate your courses to move to another level, you will discover that in the job market, you find it very difficult
to adapt.
You find it very difficult because now we see that entrepreneurs will always like to employ bilingual citizens.
Yes.
And when you are not good in both French and English, your chances are limited.
Okay.
So what I would tell the students is that they should always put in a lot of effort in both languages.
Okay.
They should always care less if whether you are an anglophone or a francophone. These two subjects should be treated equally.
Okay. Mr. Mai, thank you. But I always love this. I always like to run away from this concept of anglophone or francophone, because I think that as a Cameroonian, you are either from a French background or an English background. Anyway, that's another argument on itself. Mr. Ngum, if you had the opportunity to talk to the government, because you are talking to the world, what will you tell them in relation to this, the nature of bilingual schools in our country?
Given the opportunity that I can speak, the people can view me talking, I will tell the government that the concept of bilingualism in our country is a fruitful concept, and the outcome lies in the hands of the government. They should design a forum that will enable this concept of bilingualism to be effective. There is no penalty that speculates that if a document was to be written in English and it is written in French, then you are supposed to be penalized.
Yes.
If bilingualism is to be effective, there should be penalties.
Okay.
Again, we are begging the government, or we want the government to look into it, that if French was to be dominant in this area, it should be French.
Okay. When you say French should be dominant in this area, what are you talking about?
We are saying that this concept of bilingualism, others are really suffering into it, because when you see it, those that are fortunate to speak French, I don't want to say that they are francophones, they are fortunate to speak French.
Yes, because
they have never seen any reason to learn the English.
Okay.
And there is no equality in treating those two languages. I want to say that if Cameroon is to be bilingual and Cameroonians are to be bilingual, there should be an equality in how the languages are treated. When those that are fortunate to speak French would discover that the English is equally 50% important as compared to French, then Cameroon will be bilingual even tomorrow.
Okay.
Let them create a forum where every Cameroonian will see an interest in studying the two languages, not because most of them say that, where will I go with English? Where am I going to go with French? But if there was an equal distribution of the advantages of the languages, then Cameroon will be bilingual, as I tell you, even tomorrow.
Okay. Because of time constraint, we are almost running out of time, and we are of course out of time, and we will be leaving the studios, and we'll inform our viewers, if you did not make it from the beginning of the program, there will be a rebroadcast on Sunday from 9:30 p.m. Gentlemen, it was our pleasure having you here for us to discuss on this issue of bilingualism, and we hope you would be able to make it again in the next edition or the subsequent editions of the program.
My pleasure is also mine.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mai.
My pleasure.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are rounding up this edition of the program. Programs continue here on DBS television, and next week we will be coming up again with another edition of Facts and Realities of Education. Do not go away. We'll see you again next week. Good night.